Beneath the dazzling lights of the monarchy and behind the seemingly impenetrable walls of the palace, a haunting shadow still lingers: the mysterious death of Princess Diana. 3 decades have passed, yet the pain remains etched in the hearts of millions across the globe. A tragic car crash, countless unanswered questions, and a strange silence from the highest powers within the British royal family have long fueled suspicion and sorrow. But now, that silence is being shattered. Prince William, Diana's eldest son, now a mature man and future heir to the throne, has finally decided to speak out. After nearly 30 years of carrying the weight of grief and harboring secrets buried in darkness, William has made a stunning decision to reveal what he knows about his father, King Charles III, and the woman who has long stirred controversy, Camilla. Has William been holding on to dark truths all these years? Could it be that behind Diana's untimely death were powerful forces whose actions, directly or indirectly, led to her tragic end? And why has William chosen now, after all this time, to expose everything? This story may be the spark that ignites a royal firestorm and threatens to shake the foundations of Europe's most enduring monarchy. The letter that changed everything. Prince William uncovers a shocking secret about Princess Diana's final days. A chance discovery. An old letter. And in a matter of seconds, everything Prince William thought he knew about the final days of his mother, Princess Diana, crumbled to dust. For decades, William believed he had grasped the full story behind the tragic end of the people's princess. But one quiet afternoon, while browsing through King Charles's private collection in the royal archives, he stumbled upon something unexpected. A single piece of yellowed paper, long hidden. At first glance, it appeared insignificant, but the contents were powerful enough to shake the monarchy to its core. The letter was written by King Charles himself, dated shortly after Diana's death, but it was not a heartfelt expression of grief. It was a directive, cold and calculated. In it, Charles ordered palace aides to withhold key elements from Diana's final wishes. Specifically, a personal diary and a series of voice recordings left behind for her sons. William had never even known these tapes existed, and as he read his father's words, he was overcome not with anger at first, but with a crushing, paralyzing shock. The future King of England, known for his stoicism and composure, was reportedly left speechless, because what he had just read wasn't a betrayal by outsiders or enemies. It came from his own father, the last messages of his mother, a woman who had suffered in silence and lived under the harsh spotlight of royal life, had been buried, not by the press, not by a stranger, but by the man who once vowed to protect her. Questions came flooding in like a tidal wave. Why did Charles suppress Diana's final words? What did those recordings contain? And why, after nearly 30 years, was William only now discovering them? That letter wasn't just a document. It was a ticking time bomb. And now it had landed in William's hands. And the trust between father and son shattered, the truth blurred, and behind it all, a chilling silence. But this is only the beginning. What secrets do those tapes hold? Did Diana foresee the storm that would follow her death? Did she leave behind warnings, confessions, or messages of love that were never meant to be hidden? And more importantly, is Prince William finally ready to break the silence and reveal what his father never wanted the world to know? Because this truth, once exposed, could rewrite royal history forever. The silence that lasted decades, Princess Diana's final secret, is about to be revealed. In the shadows of her final, painful months, Princess Diana did not remain silent. On the contrary, she spoke in her own way, with trembling handwriting in her personal journal and through whispers recorded on cassette tapes. Diana left behind her deepest wishes. They weren't meant for the public. They were meant solely for her two beloved sons, William and Harry. These records are no myth. According to former palace aides who were close to her, they are very real. Her personal journal was a private sanctuary, a place where she poured her fears, heartbreak over a failed marriage, and her deep sense of being trapped in a cold royal world. And the tapes, they held Diana's actual voice, recorded late at night, filled with apologies, warnings, untold stories, and grave concerns for the safety of her sons. Diana did not die in silence. She spoke, but no one heard her. Why? Because of one man, King Charles, who ordered those most private parts of her will to be sealed away. He feared public outrage and internal collapse if the truth came out. So her final voice was buried, along with the pain she had carried for years while living beside a man who did not love her. Until now, by chance or perhaps destiny, Prince William stumbled upon this secret while accessing his father's private archive. He didn't just see the journal. He heard part of those whispered messages. That moment, described by palace insiders as earth-shattering, shook him to the core. A son who thought he knew everything about his mother's death now realized the truth had been hidden from him all along. Now William stands at a crossroads, remains silent to protect the image of the monarchy, or speak out and resurrect a voice that was silenced for nearly 3 decades. And if he chooses to speak, it will not just be a confrontation between a son and a powerful father. It will be a reckoning between truth and history, a moment where Diana's voice, long buried in shadows, rises once more, not as a whisper, but as a thunderclap shaking the very foundations of the British monarchy. Inside the secret meeting, William confronts his father. When Prince William finally confronted King Charles, it didn't happen in a grand palace hallway or at a public royal event. It happened quietly, privately, just the two of them behind closed doors. But according to royal insiders, the weight of that conversation still lingers like a thundercloud over the palace. William had come prepared, but not for diplomacy. He wasn't there as the Duke of Cambridge or the heir to the throne. He was there as a son confused, betrayed, and broken. What he had discovered in Charles's private documents, the letter, the journal, the tapes, wasn't just shocking, it was soul-shattering. He didn't need a dramatic entrance. He had only one question. Why didn't you trust me with this? That was it. No anger, no theatrics, just raw hurt. Charles, reportedly taken aback by his son's directness, paused. He seemed emotional. For a moment, it looked like he might cry, "Ma." And then he gave the answer that stunned William even more. I was trying to protect you from her pain. But that answer, meant to comfort, only made things worse. To William, this wasn't about protection. It was about control, about a decision that should never have been made without him, a choice that denied him the opportunity to hear his mother's final thoughts when he needed them most as a grieving boy, and now as a grown man, still trying to piece together the past. What started as a tense exchange quickly spiraled into a confrontation. Voices rose, emotions spilled over. William reportedly demanded to know who else was involved. Who made that call? Was it just you? Charles allegedly stayed vague, saying only, it was complicated. According to sources close to the family, the room shook, not from noise, but from the depth of everything unspoken for decades. One palace aide later called it a breaking point, years in the making, because this wasn't just about hidden tapes or secret letters. It was about grief never processed, pain never shared, trust never fully earned. William stormed out of the meeting. According to insiders, his eyes red, fists clenched. He didn't speak to anyone for hours, not even Kate. That night, he reportedly took the journal and tapes into his private study and remained there until sunrise. The confrontation had cracked something open, not just between William and Charles, but within William himself. The man who had spent years standing tall as a beautiful prince had just learned the institution he was raised to protect had protected him from the one thing he needed most, his mother's voice. And the fallout, it wasn't just emotional, it was transformational. Because from this point on, William would never see the crown or his father the same way again. And for the monarchy, the consequences were just beginning. A son torn in two, William's emotional spiral. For years, Prince William believed he had done everything right. He followed duty, he protected the institution, He carried his mother's memory with pride. But after discovering the truth, the tapes, the journal, and the betrayal, something inside him broke. Close friends say William became withdrawn. His public smile faded. Behind palace walls, he was lost in thought. He reportedly told Kate, "I feel like I've lost her all over again." The grief was fresh, as if the funeral had just happened. But this time it came with rage, not just at what was hidden, but at who hid it. His royal duties took a back seat. Appointments were postponed. He asked for privacy because, behind the future king's facade, was a son grieving his mother for the second time. It wasn't just sadness, it was devastation. And yet, as William tried to make sense of it all, another question began to rise. What exactly was Charles hiding? And why did he fear it so much? What was Charles hiding and why? As Prince William dove deeper into the files his father had kept secret for so long, the picture started to become heartbreakingly clear. Piece by piece, the puzzle of his past was finally assembling, but not in the way he expected. What he found was not just information, it was revelation. The contents of the tapes and journal Diana left behind were raw, unfiltered, and, above all, honest. She spoke with painful clarity about her life inside the palace, about the betrayal she felt, about the manipulation, the loneliness, and above all, the disintegration of her marriage to Prince Charles. According to sources, she held nothing back. One section allegedly included her private recollections of the moments she realized Charles had never truly left Camilla behind. She described the pain of feeling like a placeholder, a public image that masked a private betrayal. She voiced fears, not just about her own future, but about what kind of emotional world her sons would inherit. "They will be raised to serve a system that never protected me," Diana reportedly said in one recording. "But I pray they never forget who they are before the crown tells them who to be." To Charles, reading these words in the aftermath of her death would have been uncomfortable enough. But hearing them preserved forever in her voice must have felt like a ticking time bomb. And so, according to royal insiders, he made a decision, not as a grieving ex-husband, but as the future king. He instructed senior aides to withhold the tapes, the journal, and the specific sections of Diana's will that referenced them. His reasoning releasing them would only add more fuel to a fire already burning in the public eye. At the time, Charles was under immense scrutiny. Public support for him was at an all-time low. While Diana had been nearly canonized in the court of public opinion, the monarchy was fragile. The crown couldn't afford another blow. But in trying to shield the institution from collapse, Charles had made a devastating trade. He protected the crown, but at the cost of his son's truth, his healing, his right to hear his mother's final words. Some close to the situation believed Charles feared the tapes could drive William and Harry further away, that Diana's honest account of life inside the palace might push her sons to reject everything he stood for. Ironically, in hiding those words for 30 years, he may have made that outcome more likely than ever. Now, William is standing at a crossroads. He knows the truth. He has his mother's voice in his hands. The question is no longer what happened, it's what now. Does he fall in line with the silence that has defined royal tradition? Or does he let the world hear what his mother was finally brave enough to say? One thing is certain, if Diana's voice is ever heard, the monarchy may never sound the same again. The hidden journal Diana's words revealed. When Prince William finally opened Diana's journal, it wasn't just a stack of paper. It was a time capsule, a voice from the past echoing with memories, warnings, and hope. Her handwriting danced across the pages like a mother reaching out from beyond the grave. In it, Diana didn't just write about her public life. She wrote about her private fears, about being isolated, misunderstood, and ultimately discarded. She wrote about William and Harry, about how deeply she loved them and how much she worried the palace machine would eventually consume them too. But most hauntingly, Diana expressed her concern about the world they would inherit. She questioned how much control the monarchy should have over the lives of its children. She even wrote about specific moments with William, recalling the times he comforted her as a child, how he once said, "Don't cry, Mommy, I'll be your knight." For William, reading those words decades later broke him open. One Palisade said he spent hours with the journal, locked in his private quarters, emerging only to tell Kate, "It's like hearing her voice again after all these years." The journal didn't just bring back memories, it brought clarity. Diana had always wanted her sons to know the truth, not the version told by press secretaries or history books, but her truth. And now that William had it, what would he do with it? As the emotional weight of the journal settled in, palace officials began scrambling because they knew this wasn't just a family secret anymore. It was a potential crisis. The palace reaction damage control begins. When word reached palace staff that William had found the journal and the tapes, the corridors of Buckingham Palace fell silent. Then came the panic. Senior aides called emergency meetings. Public relations teams were put on alert. The order was simple: contain it. Label it a private family matter. Do not confirm. Do not deny. Behind the scenes, there was fear. Fear that the contents of the tapes would leak. Fear that Diana's voice, fierce, passionate, and honest, could overshadow everything the monarchy had worked to rebuild since her passing. Some inside the firm even pushed to quietly relocate the materials. But William refused. These weren't artifacts. They weren't just family documents. They were his mother's final wishes, and he wouldn't let anyone erase her again. But even as the palace scrambled to maintain appearances, something else was stirring, something they hadn't prepared for. Because far from the palace gates, there was another person who had long suspected the truth, and his name was Harry. Harry's role did he know all along, as William unraveled the full truth of their mother's final wishes. One question lingered in his mind: did Harry know? For years, Harry had alluded to secrets in interviews. He hinted at things they never told us. He spoke about how Diana's death left him emotionally paralyzed and how the royal family seemed more focused on control than healing. Now, with the tapes and journal uncovered, William began to wonder, was this the missing piece Harry had always suspected? Sources say William, emotionally overwhelmed, reached out to his brother for the first time in months. It was a short conversation, but it ended with William saying, "There's something I need to share with you, something Mom left behind." The possibility that Diana's voice could reunite her sons after years of distance was both hopeful and heartbreaking, because while the monarchy fears exposure, these two brothers may now be holding the one thing that could bring them back together: Diana's truth. But not everyone in the royal household was ready for that truth to come to light, especially not one woman who had been part of the story from the beginning. Camilla's shadow was she mentioned in the tapes. Among the most explosive elements of the hidden recordings were Diana's candid thoughts on Camilla. According to insiders, Diana spoke with brutal honesty. She described how Charles's affair haunted her marriage, how she felt betrayed, not just as a wife, but as a mother trying to shield her sons from scandal. She said, "There were three of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." That iconic line from her Panorama interview many believed had said it all. But the tapes, they went deeper. Diana reportedly feared Camilla would eventually reshape the monarchy in her image. She worried that her own memory would be erased to make way for someone the public once rejected. And perhaps Diana was right, because since Charles's coronation and Camilla's rise to queen consort, Diana's name has slowly faded from palace speeches, formal portraits, and ceremonial events. To William, this revelation felt personal. Not only had his mother's final messages been buried, but the very woman at the center of her heartache may have benefited from that silence. Camilla's role in the royal family has always been controversial, but now, with Diana's words emerging from the shadows, everything could change. And through it all, one person remained firmly in William's corner. Kate stands by William, a family divided. And as the emotional storm engulfed William, Kate Middleton stood by him, not just as a wife, but as a shield. She had always been his quiet anchor, the one who grounded him when palace politics pulled him in every direction. And now, as William confronted the deepest betrayal of his life, Kate was the first person he turned to. Insiders say Kate sat with him for hours as he read Diana's journal and listened to the tapes. She didn't speak much. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. She held his hand. She brought him tea. She reminded him in silence that he wasn't alone. But behind that calm support was quiet fury. Kate reportedly believed the tapes should have been given to William years ago. She encouraged him to lean into the truth, not for scandal, but for healing. Still, her support came at a cost. Tensions between Kate and Camila, once subtle, became sharper. One source described a public appearance where Camila offered a comment, and Kate simply smiled and turned away. The atmosphere was cold. The insider said, "You could feel the divide." Now, with Diana's voice reawakened and the family standing on the opposite sides of history, Kate and William face a choice: stay silent and protect tradition, or speak out and risk everything. Public sentiment explodes. Diana's voice returns. The palace may have tried to keep this secret buried, but once whispers of the letter and the tape surfaced, the public roared to life. It began with a quiet leak. A royal source close to the situation hinted to the press that William had uncovered hidden parts of Diana's will. Then came the details: the journal, the tapes, the emotionally charged confrontation with Charles, and finally the spark that ignited it all. Diana's voice had returned. Social media erupted with one phrase: "Let Diana speak." People demanded transparency. Fans of Diana, both old and new, filled timelines with photos, quotes, and memories of the woman they believed had always been wronged. But this time, Bisan, the outrage wasn't just aimed at tabloids or past scandals. It was aimed inside the palace walls. Articles began to circulate. Was Charles trying to protect the monarchy or himself? Had Camilla's rise been paved over the silence of another woman's truth? And, most painfully, had William spent 30 years in the dark while others knew the truth all along? Public support surged for Prince William, with many calling him his mother's son in every way. Royal commentators noted that the crown's silence only fueled suspicion. Every day the palace said nothing. Diana's ghost grew louder. And now, with millions calling for the release of the tapes and the full journal, William found himself at a crossroads. The institution he was born to lead was the same one that had kept his mother's final words from him. But would he risk everything to honor her? What William might do next: a royal reckoning. Inside the palace, the air had changed, not just because of the tapes or the journal, but because William was no longer grieving quietly. He was thinking, planning, and, according to palace aides, seriously considering his next move. For months, William had spoken publicly about the need for transparency, accountability, and emotional honesty, especially in raising his children. But now, those words had taken on a new meaning. The future king wasn't just reflecting on the crown, he was reflecting on himself. Some insiders say he's contemplating releasing selected portions of the tapes or journal, not to shame his father, but to let Diana speak, finally, in her own words. Others say William wants to privately share them with Harry first, in an effort to rebuild their strained relationship, a quiet act of unity before a very public storm. Either way, the tension is undeniable. Senior royals fear that such a release could open a generational divide in the monarchy, between those clinging to the past and those trying to reimagine its future. But for William, it may not be a matter of politics anymore. It's about legacy, his mother's legacy. She was silenced once. Will he let that happen again? As the public rallies behind him and the institution braces for impact, all eyes turn to the man who was once the boy in the funeral procession behind Diana's casket. He's not walking behind anymore. He's leading. And what comes next could change everything. The crown and the ghost. Will this change the monarchy forever? 30 years after her death, Princess Diana is once again the most powerful voice in the royal family. Her words, once locked away in silence, are now echoing through halls she never trusted. And standing at the center of it all is Prince William, the boy she loved more than anything. Now the man who must decide whether her truth will be heard. The monarchy has survived scandal, divorce, death, exile. But this is different. This isn't an external threat. It's internal, intimate, and deeply human. Because this isn't about protocol or public image anymore. It's about a mother, a son, and a truth that was buried for decades. William must choose stay silent to protect the very institution that silenced Diana, or speak up, even if it shakes the pillars of the palace. According to one insider, this is the hardest decision he's ever faced. But he knows what Diana would have wanted. Meanwhile, King Charles finds himself more isolated than ever, caught between his son's anguish and his own past decisions. Camilla, too, faces renewed public scrutiny, her image as queen consort now shadowed by the resurgence of Diana's voice. And the people, they're watching, listening, waiting. One thing is certain, Diana is no longer just a memory. She's a force, a presence. And if William decides to let her speak, the monarchy may never be the same again. Because no matter how many crowns are passed, some ghosts refuse to be silenced. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how history begins to heal. If one day Prince William ascends to the throne of the United Kingdom, will he be the one to break the decades-long silence? That is the question that sends chills down many spines. Behind the calm and dutiful image of a future king lies a heart once shattered by the suspicious death of his mother. Diana was not only the people's princess, she was a loving mother, a symbol of truth and compassion. Yet her death remains shrouded in darkness, cloaked by secrets that were never fully revealed. William knows better than anyone the pain that comes from buried truths. He was denied the right to hear his mother's final words. He once sat in silence reading his father's letter, a letter that had kept hidden the truth for 3 decades. So if one day he holds absolute power, will he have the courage to unlock the doors long sealed shut, or will he choose silence, like those before him, to preserve a flawless royal image? That choice will not only shape the destiny of a monarchy, but also decide whether Diana's voice will ever be heard again. Will William become the first king brave enough to speak the truth, or will that truth remain buried beneath the cold stone walls of the royal palace?